Olivia Langston didn't believe in ghosts until she saw one at Gate C21. Not the kind that haunted the dead, but the kind that haunted the living. The kind that looked like a man she once loved, holding hands with the two little girls she hadn't seen in 6 years, her ex-husband, her daughters. For a moment, everything in the bustling Newark terminal stopped. The rolling suitcases, the boarding announcements, the white noise of flight, it all fell away. The only thing she could hear was her own pulse hammering in her ears. Elijah Ford stood just 20 feet away, leaning down to tie the shoe of the smaller girl. Leah, the other, Ava, her twin, was watching the departure board with a concentration that made Olivia's throat ache. They'd grown so much. Their hair, once wispy curls, now framed faces she barely recognized. Faces that looked like his and hers. 6 years. 6 years of board meetings, private jets, and empty penthouses. 6 years of pretending she hadn't left behind the only thing that ever mattered. And there they were. Elijah looked older, lines around his eyes, silver at his temples, but his posture, strong, deliberate, was the same. The way he tucked a stray curl behind Leah's ear was the same. The calm, grounded energy that used to anchor her chaos, it was all there, and she was still invisible to him. She stood frozen, a billion-dollar woman undone by 3 ordinary people. Her phone buzzed. Her assistant's voice filled her ear. "Ms. Langston, Zurich's waiting on the call. The merger won't—" "I'll call them back," she whispered. "Back? Ma'am, the board—" Click. She ended the call and took a step forward, pulse rising. She wanted to run, to scream, to fall to her knees and beg forgiveness, but she didn't know where to start. Then Elijah turned. For 1 second, their eyes met. Recognition hit like an electric current. His expression didn't change. No anger, no shock, just a flicker of something unreadable. He looked right through her, as if he wasn't sure she was real. Leah tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, can we get snacks before we go?" "Sure, bug," he said softly, his gaze never leaving Olivia. Her breath caught. She tried to speak, but her throat locked. He blinked once, turned back to the girls, and guided them toward the gate. Ava glanced up at her father. "Who's that lady?" Elijah didn't answer. Olivia's knees went weak. By the time she reached the window, the plane was already taxiing down the runway. She stood there until it disappeared. Hours later, back in her penthouse overlooking Manhattan, Olivia stared at the skyline that used to thrill her. Now it felt sterile, like the reflection of someone else's life. She poured herself a glass of water and sat at the edge of the couch, hands trembling. 6 years. It wasn't just time that had passed. It was childhood birthdays, scraped knees, lost teeth, moments she'd forfeited when she walked away. She could still remember the night she left. The house smelled like formula and lavender lotion. Her hands were shaking as she held the twins' tiny blankets. She'd been sick, her mind fractured by something dark and consuming. The doctors called it postpartum psychosis. She called it fear. Elijah had begged her to stay. "We'll get through this, Liv." But she looked into the crib and felt nothing but terror. The voice in her head whispered that she would hurt them, that she wasn't safe. So she left, and he never came after her. Now she knew why. He'd built a life without her. She pressed her hands to her face, a sob slipping through her fingers. For years, she drowned herself in success to forget the emptiness she'd created. But seeing them again had cracked her world open. There was no going back to the person who could walk away. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. Then it buzzed a second time. And when she glanced down, her breath stopped. A message. From him. Elijah Ford. "You saw us." Her pulse spiked. She typed before she could think. "Olivia, I didn't plan to, I swear." A pause, then 3 dots appeared. Elijah. "Then why didn't you walk away?" She stared at the screen. How could she explain that her legs refused to move, that every inch of her had been screaming to reach him, to reach them? "Olivia, because I couldn't." The reply came faster than she expected. Elijah. "They don't know who you are." Her heart splintered. "Olivia, I know, but I want to change that." Long silence. Elijah. "Don't." Her breath caught. She set the phone down, unable to look at the words again. But she couldn't unsee his face. She couldn't unhear Leah's laughter. And she couldn't forget the fact that he'd replied at all. For years, she'd told herself that closure was impossible, that some doors stayed locked forever. But the message on her phone wasn't closure. It was a crack, a beginning disguised as an ending. She stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the glittering city. Below her, people were rushing to flights, meetings, lives that still moved forward. She'd built her empire on control, on never hesitating. And for once, she didn't want control. She wanted them. Olivia picked up her phone again, opened her calendar, and deleted everything for the next week. Then she typed one more message. Olivia, I'm coming to see you, Eli. Please don't tell me no. No reply came, but she booked a flight to Salt Lake City anyway. As the jet engines roared beneath her the next morning, Olivia watched the sunrise spill across the clouds. Her reflection in the window looked strange, older, softer, human again. She didn't know if Elijah would open the door when she arrived. She didn't even know if the girls would look at her. But she knew one thing for certain. For the first time in 6 years, she wasn't running away. She was going home. Salt Lake City looked nothing like the life Olivia Langston had built for herself. There were no private car services waiting at the terminal, no cluster of assistants greeting her with an itinerary, no sleek skyline of glass and ambition. Instead, there were mountains, majestic, unshakable, indifferent to her status. And there was silence. For the first time in years, silence felt heavier than noise. She rented a small hybrid sedan, the kind of car her finance team would mock her for driving, and followed the map toward a quiet suburb on the city's east side. Every mile peeled something from her, a layer of control, of vanity, of armor. By the time she reached the neighborhood, she felt almost bare. The houses were modest but cared for. Children's bikes leaned against fences. A golden retriever barked somewhere behind a white picket gate. The world here moved slowly, like it had no idea people measured time in quarterly profits elsewhere. And somewhere in that calm was Elijah. Her pulse picked up as she pulled over near a small park. She didn't dare drive up to his address. Not yet. The thought of standing on his porch, of him opening the door with her daughters beside him, felt impossible. She needed to prepare. So she called Cameron. He answered on the second ring, his tone clipped and professional as always. Miss Langston, Zurich's in chaos. The board's threatening to suspend your voting power unless you appear in the next meeting. I told them you were in seclusion for health reasons. Please tell me that's true. Olivia stared out the window at a child kicking a soccer ball across the grass. You could say that, he sighed. Where are you? Utah. A pause. Why? I found Elijah. The line went silent long enough that she could hear her own heartbeat. You told me you didn't want to. I didn't, she interrupted. But I saw him. And the girls. They're so much older now, Cam. He's sick. Another pause, softer this time. What kind of sick? She opened her laptop and clicked the file Cameron had sent her the night before. The one she hadn't been able to read until now. The diagnosis stared back at her. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. Her throat tightened. It's progressing. He's teaching part-time, taking care of them alone. Liv? Cameron's voice broke through, gentler than usual. You can't fix this. I'm not trying to fix it, she whispered. I'm trying to make it right. Are you sure you're not doing this out of guilt? She let out a small, bitter laugh. If guilt was my only reason, I would have stayed in New York. I'd have bought them a trust fund and called it redemption. He exhaled, long and quiet. Then what's your plan? She looked toward the horizon. I don't have one. That evening, Olivia sat in her hotel room, staring at the city lights below. The world outside was calm, almost gentle, while hers felt suspended between panic and longing. She'd spent the day driving by Elijah's neighborhood twice, but couldn't bring herself to stop. It wasn't fear of rejection, it was fear of what would happen if he didn't reject her. If he forgave her. What then? She opened her laptop again and scrolled through photos of the twins from before she left, the last ones she'd kept. 2 babies swaddled in matching blankets. She had memorized every curve of their cheeks, every crease of their tiny hands. But now they were strangers. The guilt that lived in her chest had evolved into something heavier, regret mixed with awe. They'd become people without her. At 10:42 p.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. You're in town. Her breath caught. She didn't need to ask who it was. Olivia. I just wanted to see how you're doing. I didn't plan to. Elijah. You never planned to, Liv. That's the problem. She closed her eyes. His words cut not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Olivia. Please, I just want to talk. No response. For a full minute, she stared at the 3 blinking dots on her screen. Then they vanished. Her chest tightened, and before she could stop herself, she typed again. Olivia. I'm at the Marriott downtown. If you want to see me, I'll be there. If not, I'll leave tomorrow. She hit send. Then she waited. He came. Not that night, but the next morning. Olivia had barely finished her first cup of coffee when she saw him standing in the hotel lobby, wearing a dark jacket, jeans, and the kind of tired expression that no amount of sleep could fix. He didn't look like the man she remembered, but he looked like the man she loved. Elijah. Her voice cracked on his name. He nodded once. Olivia. They stood there, awkwardly still, surrounded by the muted buzz of travelers checking in and out. She gestured toward the cafe. Can we sit? He followed silently. Up close, she saw the tremor in his right hand, the small, betraying movement he tried to hide under the table. I read your file, she began softly. I'm sorry. His jaw tightened. You don't get to say that. She swallowed. You're right. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched like a fault line. Finally, he said, Why now? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Because I saw you and the girls, and it felt like the universe decided I'd run long enough. Elijah's gaze softened for a heartbeat, then hardened again. They don't know who you are. I know. They think you're dead. The words hit her like a blow. You told them that? I told them the truth, he said quietly. That you disappeared. Her eyes stung. Elijah, please, let me. No, he said sharply, standing. You don't get to please your way back into our lives. If you mean what you say, prove it. Don't text, don't promise. Show up. He turned to leave, but she caught his sleeve. When? He paused. Thursday, Liberty Rink, 8 a.m. For what? He met her eyes, the faintest spark of something, hope or challenge, flashing there. For the girls. Then he walked away. Olivia sat there for a long time after he left, staring at the untouched coffee between her hands. For the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not control, resolve. And this time, she wasn't leaving. The rink was colder than Olivia expected. The smell of ice and metal, the echo of laughter, the scrape of skates. It all collided into a world that didn't belong to her anymore. She stood by the entrance, watching from behind the plexiglass as parents called out to their children. And there, in the center of it all, were her daughters. Ava glided with precision, her movements sharp, disciplined, already a perfectionist. Leah, by contrast, was a blur of joy and chaos, spinning wildly before tumbling into the ice and laughing like it didn't matter. Olivia couldn't move. Her breath caught as she took in the living proof of what she'd missed. 2 lives that had bloomed in her absence. Elijah stood near the rail, hands resting on a cane she hadn't noticed before. It wasn't just for support, it was necessity. The tremor in his arm, the slight hitch in his step, the subtle struggle to keep his balance, it all confirmed what she'd read in that report. He looked up and saw her. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then he gave the smallest nod, one that said, I see you. Don't speak yet. She nodded back. When the girls skated off for a break, Elijah met her by the bleachers. You came, he said quietly. I said I would. He nodded. I didn't think you'd actually follow through. I'm trying to change that. His gaze flickered toward the twins. They don't know who you are, Olivia. They think you're just watching. That's okay, she said softly. Let them. He studied her for a moment. You're not the same. No, she agreed. Neither are you. He gave a humorless smile. Fair. She glanced down at his hand on the cane. Is it bad? Bad enough, he said simply. I can still drive, still teach, still embarrass them at school functions. Olivia's throat tightened. You shouldn't have had to do it all alone. He looked at her then. Really looked. His eyes sharp with restrained emotion. You left me too. I know. No, I don't think you do. His voice hardened. You left when they were barely a month old. You didn't call, didn't write. I thought you were dead, Liv. Do you have any idea what it's like explaining that kind of silence to two babies who ask for a mom they don't remember? She flinched, every word cutting like glass. I was sick. I thought I was dangerous, he interrupted. You thought they'd be safer without you? Her breath hitched. Yes. His jaw tightened, but the anger in his eyes dimmed, replaced by something heavier. Then you were wrong, because they weren't safer. They just didn't know what they were missing. For a long moment, they stood there in the hum of the rink, surrounded by other people's laughter. I can't undo what I did, Olivia whispered, but I want to be here now, even if it's just as someone they get to know. Elijah exhaled, eyes following Leah as she raced clumsily toward her sister. You really think it's that simple? No, she said, but it's a start. He was quiet for a while, his gaze distant. Finally, he said, Leah's the easy one. She forgives too quickly. Ava, she's the one who'll test me, Olivia finished softly. He gave a small, reluctant smile. You always were good at reading people. Only when it matters. He looked at her again, the lines of his face etched with fatigue. You want a chance? Be at our house tomorrow, 6 sharp, dinner. Her breath caught. Dinner? Don't make me regret it. The next evening, Olivia stood on Elijah's porch, gripping a grocery bag like a shield, her stomach twisted with nerves. She had prepared for boardrooms, lawsuits, takeovers, but never this. The door opened before she could knock. Leah's wide eyes blinked up at her. Oh, you're the lady from the rink. Olivia smiled faintly. That's me. Leah tilted her head. Did you bring snacks? Better, Olivia said, lifting the bag. Lasagna. Leah gasped. That's Dad's favorite. From inside, Elijah called out, Leah, let her in before you interrogate her. Leah grinned and stepped aside. The house smelled like cinnamon and old wood. The walls were covered in framed photos. Ava at a science fair, Leah with a gap-toothed grin, Elijah sitting at a piano with both girls on his lap. Olivia's heart twisted. She was everywhere and nowhere in this house, absent but haunting the edges of every picture. Ava appeared from the hallway, cautious as a cat. You're here. Hi, Ava. She crossed her arms. You don't skate very well. Olivia laughed softly. No, I don't. Leah giggled. She fell 3 times. Ava frowned. I counted 4. Then you were paying attention, Elijah said, walking in. He looked better tonight, less guarded, but still weary. She's staying for dinner. Ava hesitated, then shrugged. Okay. Dinner was quiet, punctuated by Leah's chatter and Elijah's occasional cough. Olivia mostly listened, absorbing every detail, every sound. Leah asked questions about her big city life, while Ava kept studying her like a puzzle with missing pieces. After dessert, Leah yawned dramatically and trudged toward her room. Ava followed but paused in the doorway. Thanks for dinner, she said carefully. Olivia smiled. Anytime. When they were gone, Elijah leaned back in his chair, eyes on her. You didn't run. I wanted to, she admitted. He chuckled. Good. You'd have missed my favorite part. What's that? The part where they start liking you. She blinked, caught off guard. You think they will? He met her gaze, steady and quiet. They already do. They just don't know why yet. Later, as she drove back to her hotel, the scent of cinnamon and laughter still clinging to her, Olivia realized something she hadn't dared believe before. This wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about belonging, and for the first time in 6 years, she was willing to fight for it. The next morning, sunlight spilled across Olivia's hotel room, but she couldn't shake the memory of the night before. The laughter, the awkwardness, the warmth of something she hadn't dared to call home. She'd lain awake replaying every detail of dinner. The way Leah had leaned against Elijah's shoulder when she was tired. The way Ava had quietly corrected her father's math when he joked about his age. There had been such normalcy in that chaos, such comfort in the imperfection. And for the first time in years, Olivia had felt like she was allowed to breathe. Now she needed to see them again. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. Zurich, the board. Words like urgent, executive decision, and loss mitigation. The language of her old life, the life that had kept her safe and numb. She didn't even open it. Instead, she texted Elijah. Olivia, thank you for dinner. Can I see you and the girls today? Minutes passed. Then, Elijah. We're at the community center. Leah has art. Ava has music. You can come. But don't be late. The community center was nothing like the glass offices she was used to. It smelled faintly of glue and popcorn. Children's artwork lined the walls, bright and messy, full of life. Olivia found Elijah sitting in the hallway, cane propped against his knee, a paper cup of coffee in his hand. He looked up as she approached. You came, he said simply. You said not to be late. He smiled faintly. Leah will like that. She hesitated. You look tired. Comes with the territory, he said, lifting the coffee. It's either this or collapse by noon. Her chest tightened. You shouldn't be doing all this alone. His expression softened but stayed guarded. You're here now. That's something. They sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the faint echo of children singing in the next room. When Leah burst through the double doors, she was covered in paint, beaming. Daddy, look, it's us! She held up a paper splattered with bright colors. 3 stick figures holding hands under a sky of purple stars. Elijah chuckled. That's beautiful, Bug. Leah turned to Olivia, grinning. You can be the next one. I'll add you when I have more paper. Olivia's throat closed. I'd like that. Leah raced back to her table, already humming. Ava appeared moments later, clutching a music sheet. Dad, I learned a new song. It's from your old book. Elijah's eyes softened. Which one? The one you wrote for Mom, she said innocently. The air went still. Ava looked between them, sensing she'd said something wrong. Sorry, she murmured. Olivia forced a smile. No, it's okay. Can I hear it? Ava nodded hesitantly. She sat at the old upright piano near the stage and began to play. The melody was slow, deliberate, full of yearning, the kind of song that carried both love and loss. Olivia remembered it. He'd written it when they were newly married, before the twins, before everything cracked. Elijah closed his eyes, and Olivia couldn't tell if he was listening or remembering. Maybe both. When Ava finished, she looked up, uncertain. Did I do it right? Elijah smiled. You did it perfectly. Then he turned to Olivia. You remember it. Her voice was soft. I used to fall asleep to it. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, nostalgia, forgiveness. He didn't speak, and she didn't push. Later, as they left the building, Leah skipped ahead, her backpack bouncing. Ava walked beside Elijah, quietly observant. Are you okay? Olivia asked him. He exhaled. Most days. Some are worse. I want to help, she said. Not just for the girls, for you. He looked at her for a long time. You helped once by leaving. Her stomach dropped. Eli. He stopped walking. I don't say that to hurt you, but back then, you couldn't have been what they needed. Or what I needed. You know that, don't you? Tears stung her eyes. I know, but I can be now. He nodded slowly. Then start small. That night she showed up again, uninvited, carrying takeout and a determination that surprised even her. Leah nearly tackled her at the door. You came back. I said I would. Ava, sitting on the couch with her homework, didn't look up. We didn't think you would. Olivia smiled gently. Then I'll just have to prove you wrong. Dinner was loud and imperfect. Leah spilled her drink twice. Elijah told a story that made the girls laugh so hard they choked on noodles. And in between it all, Olivia caught Ava watching her. Not angry this time, but curious. When the meal ended, Leah yawned dramatically. Mom, Miss Olivia, can you braid my hair like you did yours? The word mom hit Olivia like a wave, but she steadied her breath. Of course. They sat together on the couch. Leah perched between her knees. Her small body was warm, her hair smelling faintly of apple shampoo. As Olivia's fingers worked through the strands, she felt something shift, something delicate, like the sound of a door unlocking after years of rust. Ava watched from across the room, pretending to read. When Olivia finished, Leah ran to the mirror. "Look, Ava, I'm fancy." Ava's lips twitched. "Not bad," she said, glancing at Olivia. "You didn't mess it up." Olivia smiled. "High praise." Elijah's voice came from behind her, soft but certain. "You're doing fine, Leave." She turned. He was watching her with the kind of look that used to undo her. One full of quiet understanding. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a visitor in their world. She felt like she was finding her way back home. That night as she left, Leah hugged her fiercely. Ava didn't, but she said, "See you tomorrow." Elijah walked her to the door. "They're letting you in," he said. "Are you?" she asked. He hesitated. "One day at a time." Olivia nodded, her heart both aching and full. "Then I'll take every one of them." The call came just after midnight. Olivia had been lying awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind full of tangled thoughts. Leah's laughter, Ava's cautious half-smiles, the way Elijah's voice softened when he said her name again. For the first time in years, her loneliness had begun to fade. Then her phone buzzed. It was Ava. Her message was short, shaky, misspelled. "Dad fell. Ambulance. Come fast." Olivia didn't remember grabbing her keys or shoes. She only remembered running through the rain, heart pounding as she sped toward the address she had come to know by heart. When she reached the house, red and blue lights flashed across the wet pavement. Paramedics were wheeling Elijah toward the ambulance. Leah stood barefoot on the porch, crying. Ava stood behind her, pale and still, gripping her sister's hand. "Eli!" Olivia's voice cracked as she rushed forward. Elijah looked up weakly, the tremor in his hand more pronounced now. "Liv," he murmured, his voice strained but calm. "You didn't have to." "Of course I did." She reached for his hand before the paramedics lifted him inside. "I'm right here," he tried to smile. "Don't scare the girls." Then he was gone, swallowed by flashing lights and rain. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion. Olivia sat in the waiting room, Leah curled against her shoulder, Ava on the other side, pretending not to need comfort but leaning closer anyway. "He'll be okay," Olivia whispered, though her voice shook. "He's strong," Leah sniffled. "He said he slipped, but he couldn't move his leg right after. I thought—" Olivia brushed her hair back gently. "You did the right thing calling for help, both of you." Ava's voice was quiet. "I didn't know who else to call." Olivia met her gaze. "You called me." Ava blinked, startled by her own choice. "Yeah." That single word carried more forgiveness than any speech ever could. Hours later, a doctor approached. "Mr. Ford's awake. He's stable, but he'll need physical therapy and more rest. ALS can make balance unpredictable." Olivia exhaled, relief flooding her. "Can we see him?" The doctor nodded. "One at a time." She looked at the girls. "Go ahead, Leah. He'll want to see your smile first." Leah hopped up, eager. Ava stayed behind, arms crossed. "You should go after." "I will," Olivia said softly. When Leah disappeared through the curtain, Ava's composure faltered. "He doesn't tell us how bad it is," she whispered. "But I can see it." "I know," Olivia said. Ava's voice trembled. "He's scared." "So am I." That honesty hung between them, fragile but real. Ava's hand brushed against hers, accidental at first, then deliberate. "I don't want him to be alone." Olivia squeezed her hand. "He's not anymore." When she entered his room, Elijah looked pale but peaceful. His eyes opened as she approached. "You shouldn't have come," he rasped, though his lips curved faintly. "I'll keep ignoring that sentence," she said, pulling up a chair. He chuckled softly, the sound dissolving into a cough. She reached for the water on his tray, steadying the cup for him. "Always taking charge," he teased. "I learned it from you." He studied her face for a long moment, as though memorizing it. "You're good with them." Her throat tightened. "I'm trying." "They notice." She smiled faintly. "Even Ava. Especially Ava. She just won't admit it yet." They sat in silence for a while, the steady rhythm of the machines filling the space between them. Finally, she asked, "How long have you known?" He didn't pretend to misunderstand. 3 years. Started with tremors, then muscle weakness. Doctors confirmed it after you left for Hong Kong that year. She winced. You knew where I was. I never stopped knowing. Her eyes burned. Why didn't you tell me? What would it have changed? He asked quietly. You weren't ready then. And now? He smiled faintly. Now you're here. When he was discharged 2 days later, Olivia brought him home. She organized the medications, set up a physical therapy schedule, and made sure the girls didn't see the tremors worsen. One evening, as she helped him to the couch, Elijah looked at her. You can't do this alone. She arched a brow. Funny, that's exactly what I told you. He chuckled weakly. You always have to win. Not this time, she said, tucking the blanket over him. This isn't a competition. It's us. He fell quiet, then asked softly, Why did you really come back, Liv? Her chest tightened. Because I couldn't breathe without them anymore. Without you. His eyes glistened. I don't know how to forgive the past. Then don't, she said. Just live in the present with me. He reached for her hand, his grip weak but certain. That's harder than it sounds. Then we'll practice, she whispered. That night after the girls went to bed, Olivia stood in the kitchen, watching the soft glow of the living room where Elijah slept. The house felt different now, alive, connected. She took a deep breath, her reflection shimmering faintly in the dark window. She had spent her life chasing the illusion of control, only to learn that real strength lived in the moments you couldn't script, the messy, painful, beautiful ones that reminded you what it meant to love. She turned off the lights and walked back toward the living room. Elijah stirred as she adjusted the blanket around him. You still worry too much, he murmured. She smiled faintly. You still underestimate how much I care. He drifted back to sleep, a faint smile on his lips. Olivia sat beside him in the dark, listening to his breathing, to the quiet hum of the house, to the rhythm of a second chance beginning again. Spring came softly to the foothills of Salt Lake City. Morning light poured through the kitchen windows, glinting off the cereal bowls, the crayon-streaked drawings, and the stack of therapy schedules taped to the refrigerator. Olivia stood at the stove, carefully burning pancakes again. Leah giggled at the table, clapping her paint-stained hands. You're supposed to flip it before it turns black, Miss Olivia. I know, Olivia said, laughing despite herself. It's called artistic cooking. Ava sat beside her sister, chewing thoughtfully. Dad says pancakes are an art form. You're failing the assignment. Olivia feigned a wounded gasp. Harsh critics. You're funny, Leah said. Not like the people on TV. Good, Olivia replied, sliding another misshapen pancake onto the plate. I'd rather be real than perfect. Ava raised an eyebrow. You used to be perfect, didn't you? The words stung more than they should have. Olivia smiled softly. Maybe that was the problem. Later, after Elijah's morning therapy session, the four of them sat on the porch. The scent of lilacs hung in the air. Elijah leaned back, legs covered by a blanket, eyes closed as the sun warmed his face. The tremors had worsened, but his voice remained steady, low and rich like music even in stillness. You should have seen her today, Leah announced proudly. She flipped one pancake perfectly. Elijah chuckled. Miracles happen. I'm improving, Olivia said, one burnt breakfast at a time. He opened one eye, smiling faintly. That's life, Liv. Burnt pancakes and second chances. She looked at him for a long moment. You make it sound easy. It's not, he said quietly, but it's worth the mess. Ava, sitting beside him, plucked a dandelion from the grass and examined it. Dad, can we go to the park later? If my legs cooperate, he said, then turned to Olivia. You up for a field trip? Always, she said. For a few hours, it felt almost like the world had slowed down just for them. At the park, Leah chased butterflies while Ava sketched beneath a tree. Elijah sat on the bench beside Olivia, watching them. The breeze carried the faint sound of a street performer's guitar from across the green. Do you ever miss it? She asked. Miss what? The music, the stage, composing. He smiled faintly. Every day, but I still hear it. In your head? He shook his head. In them. Leah's laughter, Ava's rhythm, the sound of life going on. Olivia swallowed hard. You always knew how to make silence sound beautiful. He looked at her then, his expression gentler than she remembered. And you always knew how to fill it. They sat there quietly for a while. When Leah tripped and scraped her knee, Olivia was the first to run over. She knelt, cleaning the wound gently as Leah whimpered. "It's okay, baby," Olivia whispered. "It'll heal." Leah sniffled, her small hands clutching Olivia's arm. "You sound like Dad." "I'll take that as a compliment." When Olivia looked up, Elijah was watching her. He smiled faintly, then mouthed, "Thank you." That evening, after the girls were asleep, Olivia found Ava's sketchbook open on the table. The drawing made her breath catch. 4 figures standing hand in hand beneath a canopy of stars. Above them, in Ava's careful handwriting, was a single word: home. Her fingers trembled as she traced the pencil lines. It was the first time she'd seen herself included. Elijah's voice broke the silence behind her. "She finished that tonight." Olivia turned. He was in his wheelchair, blanket across his lap, watching her with that same quiet intensity. "She's letting you in," he said softly. "I don't know if I deserve it." "Maybe not," he admitted, "but you're earning it." She met his gaze. "Does that mean you're letting me in too?" He exhaled slowly, eyes closing for a moment. "I don't know how to stop." Something warm and fragile settled in her chest. "Then don't." The next morning, the twins came home from school carrying a flyer. "Family Story Day!" Leah shouted. "We have to bring a parent to tell a story." Ava added, "Everyone's picking a memory. I already chose Dad's song." Elijah smiled weakly. "You'll do better than I ever did." Leah tugged at Olivia's hand. "You can come too. You tell stories, right?" Olivia hesitated. "It's been a long time since I told one." Ava looked up, curious. "What kind did you tell?" "One's about foxes," Olivia said, smiling faintly. "There was a mother fox who lost her way in the snow, and her cubs had to lead her home." Leah gasped. "That's sad." Ava frowned thoughtfully. "Did she find them?" Olivia met their eyes. "Eventually." When she glanced at Elijah, his gaze held hers, soft, knowing, full of unspoken memory. "You should tell that one," he said quietly. "It's time." That night, after the girls were asleep, Olivia sat beside him on the couch. His breathing was slower now, his body betraying him little by little. "Eli," she whispered, "are you scared?" He didn't answer right away. "Only of what I'll leave unfinished." "You've already given them everything." He smiled faintly. "Not everything. You're the part they needed that I couldn't give." Her throat tightened. "Don't say that." "It's true," he said. "You came back when I needed you most. That's not failure, Liv. That's grace." She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his trembling ones. "Then let's finish the story together." He leaned back, his eyes soft and full of peace. "That's all I ever wanted." When she went to bed that night, Olivia dreamed of the fox and her cubs, of a trail of paw prints leading home through the snow. And when she woke, sunlight poured through the window again, warm and golden, like a promise she finally believed she could keep. The morning of Family Story Day began with nervous laughter and the smell of toast. Leah hummed while brushing her hair, her energy contagious even at sunrise. Ava, in her usual calm precision, folded her presentation papers 3 times before slipping them into her backpack. Elijah sat at the table, quietly sipping his coffee while Olivia helped the girls with breakfast. The house felt alive, too alive to hide what everyone was pretending not to feel. Elijah's hands trembled a little more each day, and his voice was softer now, like the world was turning down his volume one breath at a time. But today wasn't about that. Today was about stories. "Are you ready?" Olivia asked the girls, her smile calm even as her chest tightened. Leah beamed. "I'm going first. I practiced my story about the dragon who wanted to be a singer." Ava rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. "And I'm playing Dad's song." Olivia turned to Elijah, adjusting his scarf. "You sure you're up for this?" He gave a tired grin. "Wouldn't miss it. My audience awaits." She smiled, though she saw the strain behind his humor. The school auditorium buzzed with chatter and camera flashes. Parents crowded the folding chairs, clutching phones and coffee cups. Teachers organized small clusters of children while art projects lined the walls. Leah spotted her teacher and darted ahead. "That's my mom," she shouted, waving at Olivia before dashing off. Olivia froze. The word mom hung in the air like sunlight breaking through cloud. Elijah's hand brushed hers lightly. She said it. Her throat closed. She did. He squeezed her hand weakly. See? They're finding their way. When it was Leah's turn, she took the stage and launched into her tale about a shy dragon who learned to sing so loudly he melted the snow off his mountain. Her voice was clear and bold, her gestures wild and dramatic. She's got your flair, Elijah whispered. Yours too, Olivia murmured. The crowd laughed and clapped as Leah finished with a twirl. She bowed deeply, her pigtails bouncing. Then it was Ava's turn. She sat at the small piano, her back straight, her focus sharp. The first notes of Elijah's song filled the room, soft, deliberate, haunting. Olivia's heart clenched. She recognized every chord. The melody had changed slightly, more hopeful now, but the essence was still his, gentle persistence wrapped in love. When Ava reached the bridge, Leah joined in, humming softly beside her. The sound filled the space like a memory reborn. When the final note faded, the room erupted in applause. Ava stood and bowed, cheeks flushed. Elijah's eyes were glassy, pride and pain merging into something infinite. Olivia reached for his trembling hand, tears stinging her eyes. They finished it, he whispered. Not yet, she said softly. I still have to tell mine. When Olivia's name was called, she froze for a heartbeat. All eyes turned toward her. The billionaire, the stranger, the woman who had once vanished. She could feel the whispers ripple through the room. She walked to the small stage, the wooden floor creaking under her heels. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the microphone. Hi, she began, her voice steady but soft. I'm Olivia. I'm Leah and Ava's mom. The girls exchanged a quick glance in the front row, Leah beaming, Ava holding her breath. Olivia continued, I wanted to tell you a story about a fox, a mother fox. The room quieted. She lived in a great forest, Olivia said, her voice growing stronger. She was clever and brave, but one winter, a storm came. The snow was deep and she lost her way. For a long time she wandered alone, too scared to find her way back. She thought her cubs were safer without her. She paused, her throat tightening. Elijah's gaze steadied her from the second row. But one day, she continued, she found small paw prints in the snow. 2 sets. They were tiny but brave, walking side by side, and the mother fox realized she could follow them home. Her voice trembled on the last word. When she reached the clearing, her cubs didn't run to her right away. They had to make sure she was real. So she waited in the snow, quiet, patient, and hopeful, until finally one came close enough to touch her paw. A tear slipped down her cheek. And that's when she knew she was home again. When she finished, the room was silent. For a long moment, all she could hear was her heartbeat. Then Leah clapped, loudly, decisively. Ava followed. The applause spread like fire, filling the space with warmth. Olivia exhaled, her hands shaking. She looked toward Elijah, who smiled through his tears. You did it, he mouthed. She smiled back. We did. That evening, back at the house, the sunset painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. The girls sprawled on the living room floor, surrounded by art supplies. Leah hummed softly while Ava traced new notes onto sheet music. Elijah sat on the couch, his blanket pulled to his chin. His breathing was shallow but peaceful. Olivia brought him tea, her hand brushing his. You made them proud today, he said. She laughed softly. They made me proud. He looked at her, eyes soft. You're their home now, Liv. She blinked back tears. So are you. He smiled faintly. Maybe for a little while longer. Her throat tightened. Don't talk like that. Hey, he whispered. You came back. That's what matters. I can go easy knowing they'll be loved. She knelt beside him, pressing her forehead to his hand. Don't you dare go anywhere yet. He chuckled weakly. Bossy as ever. Olivia kissed his knuckles, her tears falling freely now. Always. Later, after the girls went to bed, Elijah drifted to sleep on the couch. Olivia sat nearby watching him. The house was quiet except for the faint rustle of spring wind outside. She whispered into the silence. You led us home, Eli. He stirred slightly, murmuring something she couldn't quite hear. She reached over, touched his hand, and stayed there until the morning light crept through the window. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the dawn, because home wasn't something she'd lost. It was something she'd finally learned to stay for. The morning Elijah didn't wake was quiet. The sky was pale and still, the kind of calm that felt unnatural, like the world was holding its breath. Olivia had risen early to start coffee, her thoughts full of schedules, medication times, and the girl's upcoming recital. She didn't notice at first that his mug remained untouched. When she went to wake him, the truth hit her before she reached the couch. Elijah lay with his blanket tucked neatly around him, his face soft and at peace. His hand, once trembling, rested still against his chest. There was no struggle, no sign of pain, only stillness, complete and irreversible. For a moment, Olivia just stood there, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and denial. Then the mug slipped from her hand, shattering across the floor. "Eli," she whispered, as though saying his name could pull him back. Nothing. She knelt beside him, pressing trembling fingers to his wrist, his neck, anywhere she might find the rhythm she refused to believe was gone. But there was only silence. "Eli," she said again, louder this time, shaking him gently. "Come on, not like this. Please." Her voice broke. When she realized he wasn't coming back, the sobs came quietly, raw, strangled sounds that filled the house like a storm finally breaking. The girls found her there minutes later. Leah's voice was small. "Mom?" Olivia turned, trying to speak, but the words refused to come. Her tears told the story instead. Ava froze in the doorway, her face pale, eyes wide with comprehension. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Leah rushed forward, shaking Elijah's arm. "Dad, wake up! You said you'd come to my recital. You promised." Olivia caught her, pulling her close, but Leah fought against her, sobbing into her chest. Ava stood rooted, silent tears sliding down her cheeks. When Leah finally went still in her arms, Olivia looked at both of them, their father's eyes, his calm, his life, and realized that she had to be what he could no longer be. "Come here," she said softly. Ava hesitated, then moved closer. Olivia wrapped her arms around both of them, holding them as tightly as she could. "He loved you so much," she whispered. "More than anything." Leah's voice was muffled against her. "But what do we do now?" Olivia kissed the top of her head. "We keep loving him. Every day, in every way we can." The days that followed passed in fragments. The hospital, the paperwork, the quiet condolences that felt like echoes. Olivia handled it all with the kind of numb efficiency that had once made her unstoppable in business. But now it felt hollow, mechanical. At night, when the house was finally still, she sat by the piano. Elijah's sheet music remained where he'd last left it, unfinished, smudged with notes that only he could have understood. Her fingers hovered over the keys, trembling. Then she began to play. The melody was uneven at first, but soon the room filled with his song, their song woven through with all the things they hadn't said. When she reached the final blank measure, she stopped. The silence afterward was unbearable. Ava appeared in the doorway. "Mom?" Olivia turned, startled. "Can you keep playing?" Ava asked softly. "It feels better when there's music." Olivia nodded and shifted to make room beside her. "Come here." Ava sat, her hands small and sure on the keys. Together they began again, filling in the spaces Elijah had left unfinished. When Leah's sleepy voice drifted from the hallway, "Play louder so he can hear it in heaven," Olivia's heart broke and mended at the same time. The funeral was simple, just as Elijah would have wanted. The small chapel overflowed with students, neighbors, and friends who'd loved him. They shared stories of his laughter, his patience, his music. The girls each placed a drawing on his casket, Leah's of their family, Ava's of a piano under the stars. When it was Olivia's turn to speak, she stood before them with shaking hands. "I used to think love was about perfection," she began, "about holding everything together, being strong, never breaking. But Elijah taught me that love isn't about control. It's about staying when everything falls apart, about finding beauty in the broken." She paused, her voice trembling. "He once told me the worst thing I ever did was leave. But before he died, he said the best thing I ever did was come back. And now I understand. Coming back wasn't about forgiveness. It was about learning how to live again. Her eyes lifted toward the ceiling, where sunlight filtered through the stained glass. And I'll keep living. For him. For them. For the music he left behind. That evening, the three of them returned home. The house felt impossibly large, every shadow a reminder of what was missing. Leah crawled into Olivia's lap on the couch, clutching her stuffed fox. Does it hurt less if we remember him all the time? Olivia brushed her hair back gently. Maybe not less, sweetheart, but remembering him keeps him here. Ava sat across from them, quiet, thoughtful. Then we should finish his song, the one he started. Olivia met her eyes, surprised. You want to? Ava nodded. He said music doesn't end. It just waits for someone else to play. Olivia's throat tightened. Then we'll finish it. Together. Leah's voice was soft. Can we call it home again? Olivia smiled through her tears. That's perfect. Later that night, when the girls were asleep, Olivia sat once more at the piano. She opened Elijah's final notebook, tracing the faint indent of his handwriting. When I can't play anymore, Liv will know how to finish it. Her tears blurred the ink, but she smiled anyway. The first notes came softly, then stronger, until the house was full again. Not with absence, but with him. Each chord became a heartbeat, each pause a breath. The melody rose and fell like a promise she would never break. When she finished, she whispered into the stillness, You can rest now, Eli. We'll keep the music going. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, a quiet harmony in the dark. And for the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It sang. The weeks after Elijah's passing unfolded in a haze of quiet motion. Life didn't stop. It simply changed tempo. There were still lunches to pack, laundry to fold, school forms to sign. There were still mornings when the sun rose stubbornly, as though it didn't understand that the world had lost its rhythm. Olivia found herself moving through the house like a ghost, tidying, cooking, fixing things Elijah once did. She caught herself listening for his voice, half expecting him to call from the next room, to ask for coffee, to hum while he tuned the piano. But the silence had its own weight now, heavy, familiar, and strangely sacred. The girls grieved differently. Leah talked about her father constantly. Every drawing she made had him in it. Playing piano, teaching her to skate, laughing under a paper sun. She told stories at dinner, her voice bright but her eyes shining too much. Ava, on the other hand, folded into herself. She rarely spoke about him at all. Her sketchbooks filled with unfinished music notations and quiet pencil drawings of hands. His hands, hers, sometimes both reaching toward each other but never touching. Olivia didn't push. She simply stayed close. And when the nights grew too quiet, she played the piano. Always the same song. Home Again. The melody Elijah had started. The one they were now completing together in his absence. One evening, Olivia sat at the piano, her fingers tracing over the keys without pressing them. The sheet music lay open, blank in the final measures. She could feel him in that silence, waiting. Are we ready? She asked softly. Leah appeared beside her, wearing one of Elijah's old scarves like a superhero cape. I'm ready. Ava followed more slowly, a notebook clutched to her chest. I think I finished it. Olivia turned. You did. Ava hesitated, then handed her the notebook. On the last page was a simple melody, gentle, hopeful, familiar. But the final note lingered longer than expected, rising instead of falling. Olivia stared at it, a lump in her throat. It's beautiful. Ava shrugged, trying to mask her pride. I just thought it shouldn't sound like an ending. Dad wouldn't like that. Olivia smiled through her tears. No, he wouldn't. They began to play together, Ava on the piano, Olivia harmonizing softly, and Leah humming along, offbeat but joyful. The sound filled the room, echoing through the walls like sunlight spilling into every corner that grief had tried to darken. When the last note lingered, Olivia let her hands rest on the keys. We did it, she whispered. Leah clapped. We finished Dad's song. Ava smiled faintly. No, we continued it. After that, the house changed again. Music became their ritual. Each night before bed, they played something together, sometimes Elijah's songs, sometimes new ones. The piano, once a shrine to what was lost, became a bridge to what remained. Neighbors started visiting again, bringing casseroles, offering condolences that had long since turned into companionship. Elijah's students stopped by to share old recordings, and soon the house was filled with laughter instead of quiet sympathy. One afternoon, Olivia received a letter from the local music conservatory. "Your husband's former students have nominated him for a memorial scholarship," the dean wrote. "They hope it can support children who dream of music but can't afford to pursue it." At the bottom there was a space for her signature. She read it 3 times, then smiled. "He'd like this," she whispered. Ava looked up from the kitchen table. "Like what?" "Something your dad started is going to help other kids play music," Leah gasped. "Like a magic wish." "Exactly like that," Olivia said, signing the form. That night, Olivia stood outside on the porch. The stars stretched endlessly above her. She thought about everything Elijah had left behind: songs, laughter, lessons, love, and realized that the only thing stronger than absence was legacy. The door creaked open. Ava stepped out quietly. "Can't sleep?" Olivia asked. Ava shook her head. "I keep hearing the song in my head. I'm afraid if I fall asleep, I'll forget it." Olivia smiled softly. "You won't. Songs like that stay forever." Ava hesitated. "Do you ever stop missing him?" "No," Olivia said honestly. "But missing him doesn't hurt the same way anymore. It's like breathing, something you learn to live with." Ava looked up at the stars. "Do you think he's listening?" "I know he is." The wind moved gently through the trees, carrying with it the faint echo of a melody. A month later, the community center held a small recital in Elijah's honor. The room was full: students, parents, teachers, neighbors. A photo of him sat on the piano, his smile catching the light. Leah wore a dress with too many sparkles. Ava stood tall beside her, holding the same notebook with the completed song. Olivia sat in the front row, heart pounding. When the girls began to play, the room stilled. The opening notes were soft, but as they reached the new melody, the one Ava had written, the sound grew fuller, stronger, brighter. It wasn't just music anymore. It was memory. It was promise. It was life, stitched together from everything Elijah had taught them: to love without fear, to play without perfection, to keep going even when the song changed. When the last note hung in the air, Leah looked up and whispered, "That's for you, Daddy." Olivia closed her eyes, tears slipping free. And though she couldn't see him, she could feel him everywhere, in the air, in the walls, in the rhythm of her daughter's laughter. When the applause erupted, she stood and joined them on stage, wrapping her arms around both girls. "He would have been so proud," she said. Ava looked at her, eyes bright. "He still is." Olivia smiled through the tears. "Yeah, I think you're right." They bowed together as the audience rose to its feet, the sound of clapping filling the hall like thunder, like a heartbeat that would never stop. Summer arrived with warmth that wrapped the house like a soft blanket. The lilac bushes Elijah planted years ago bloomed again, scenting the air with their familiar sweetness. The mornings began not with silence, but with music: Leah's violin, Ava's careful piano, and the steady hum of life that refused to fade. Olivia sat on the porch with her coffee, watching the girls chase each other through the yard. Leah's laughter rose like sunlight, bright and boundless. Ava followed at a distance, her movements calmer, thoughtful. Their joy was contagious, echoing through the air like the song they had finished together, their father's song. It had been 6 months since Elijah's passing, and the ache in her chest had softened into something gentler. Grief had not disappeared. It had simply learned to coexist with love. Every day brought reminders of him, a note of music drifting from the piano, a turn of phrase from the girls that mirrored his humor, the faint creak of the old floorboards he'd never gotten around to fixing. He was gone, but he wasn't absent. Not really. The day of the scholarship dedication was cloudless. The small auditorium at the music conservatory was full: students, teachers, families, and even old friends of Elijah's who had traveled miles to be there. At the front of the room stood a polished piano and a framed photo of Elijah smiling in that unassuming way that always made people feel at ease. Olivia adjusted the microphone, her hands trembling only slightly. Ava and Leah sat in the front row, holding hands, their matching blue dresses, a subtle nod to their father's favorite color. "Thank you for being here," Olivia began, her voice soft but sure. Elijah believed that music wasn't just something you played, it was something you lived. He used to say that songs don't end when the notes stop. They keep playing in the people who hear them. She paused, taking a breath. This scholarship, the Elijah Ford Foundation, isn't just about honoring his name. It's about continuing the melody he left behind. It's about helping young dreamers find their rhythm, even when life tries to drown it out. Her gaze drifted to the photo, her voice thickening. "He taught me that love doesn't stay still. It grows, it changes shape, and sometimes it finds its way back when you least expect it. I think that's the greatest music of all." When she stepped away from the podium, the room was silent for a beat before the applause began. Soft at first, then swelling until it filled every corner. Ava rose, joining her mother on stage, and together they bowed their heads toward Elijah's photo. That night, the house glowed with golden light as Olivia tucked the girls into bed. Leah was already half asleep, clutching her stuffed fox. "Mom?" Ava whispered from the doorway. Olivia turned. "Yes, sweetheart." Ava hesitated. "Can we talk for a minute?" "Of course." Olivia followed her into the hallway. Ava's voice was quiet, thoughtful. "I've been thinking," she said, "about Dad, about you." Olivia waited, heart thudding softly. "You used to look sad all the time," Ava continued, "but now you look different, like you're breathing again." Olivia smiled faintly. "That's because of you and your sister. You remind me that life keeps moving forward." Ava nodded, then asked the question Olivia knew was coming. "Do you miss him every day?" "Every single one," she said. "But missing him doesn't hurt as much as it used to. Now it just feels like he's part of everything I do." Ava's eyes shimmered. "I think he'd be happy. You came back, Mom. You stayed." Olivia reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "I did, and I'm not going anywhere again." Ava smiled, hugging her tightly before slipping into her room. Olivia lingered in the hall, listening to the faint sound of Leah's breathing, the soft rustle of Ava turning pages in her sketchbook. The house was full of sound, life, laughter, love, and for the first time in years, she felt utterly at peace. Later, when the moon rose high over the trees, Olivia sat at the piano alone. The house was dark except for the silver light spilling through the window. On the stand lay Elijah's original sheet music, yellowed at the edges, marked with his familiar handwriting. She began to play, her fingers moving slowly at first, then faster, surer. The melody filled the quiet night, soft, steady, unbroken, and as the final notes drifted into the air, she whispered into the stillness, "We finished it, Eli, and we're still playing." A breeze moved through the open window, rustling the curtains. Somewhere deep in her heart, she could almost hear him laughing, low, warm, content. The following morning, sunlight spilled over the dining table, where Leah was spreading jam on toast and Ava was sketching a new music staff. "Mom," Leah said with a grin, "can we play the song again tonight? The one for Dad?" Olivia nodded. "Of course, every night if you want." Ava looked up, her pencil pausing midline. "We should add something new to it," she said thoughtfully. "Dad always said songs grow, remember?" Olivia's eyes softened. "Then let's grow it together." Leah raised her juice glass. "To Dad!" Olivia smiled, raising her coffee mug. "To Dad, and to new beginnings." They clinked glasses, laughter bubbling between them. Outside, the lilacs swayed in the breeze, their petals scattering like confetti. A faint melody drifted from the open window, the same one that had carried them through grief, through guilt, through healing. And as Olivia watched her daughters, two living reflections of the man she'd loved and the family she'd finally found her way back to, she understood something Elijah had tried to teach her all along. Love doesn't end, it transforms, and when you let it, it plays on forever.